is feeling energetic? Do you want to do gratitude, Ellie? I'll give it to you.
Yeah, for me, I think when you're saying gratitude, I'm still thinking of church, so I don't want to churchify it.
It's fine, churchified. we won't judge you.
Okay, where do I start? Charlene.
Moya, moya, noele.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
At least everyone's spirit is getting hyped up. I see we bringing in some sun. Thank you everyone for joining us today to come and converse as we connect to the future, what I call the future past. We see things happening before us, the things that we talked about in high school, talked about in varsity. Who thought that Christ would come in our lifetime? So as we're going to be engaging on today's topic that's going to be led by Charlene, let us brace ourselves. The topic that she's going to be talking about is, if you could remind me in that detail.
There's no detailed reminder here. Just give gratitude and then we move on.
Okay. So, how do you give gratitude without praying?
Oh, God.
It's been a while.
Hallelujah. Amen.
So thank you for everyone for joining, and I hope we enjoyed today's Connect to the Future. Thank you. Charlene, please lead us. Thank you.
I'm going to do the introduction, for goodness sake. And this guy can't stick to the brief, right? You never do. But anyway, thanks for the... I think we all...
When has he ever been able to, though?
Stick to the brief. He's never. It doesn't
No.
Right? But anyway, thank you for that, Lou. It made me chuckle. So I hope others chuckled as well, alongside with me. But again, those that struggled to come through, I do apologize. Apparently, I've got 2 links, and what have you. So apologies up front for battling to come through, and I thank you for the persistence that you applied to ultimately then come through. And again, for the last 2 weeks, I've been toppled upside down just a bit with work, so haven't had the ability to coordinate our platform. But things are going to get much easier. We're going to get more moderators. We're going to get more hosts, so that this doesn't become my show, so that other people can coordinate this session outside me. And I've loosened up the screws on admin as well. So again, I'm looking for volunteers to moderate. Mholi, thank you very much for, they know you as Martin, right? Martin, thank you so much for volunteering in moderating the next one. We've got an exciting topic coming up next week as well. So I look forward to that. So jumping on to the reason why we are gathered today, Charlene was picked by the machine. Charlene was picked up by the machine to share a topic close to her heart and take us through the journey of her thinking regarding the subject and cause us to think as well. So without taking the shine away from you, Charlene, if you can just come in and spend the next 50 minutes with us in giving us your presentation, and thereafter we'll just allow for interaction. We'll keep it to an hour, so however long Charlene takes, immediately after that we use the rest of the time to interact on the subject, just so that it doesn't become too long, because I struggle to upload them on YouTube once they become too long. So yeah, that will it. Charlene, it's your floor.
Okay. So I'm going to spend too much time so that we have more time discussing and for discourse. But Vince, if you can just if you can just share the screen for that one slide, just to talk to. So I hope you guys all did your homework and we can have a productive conversation around a world post binaries. Are you sharing, right, Vince?
Yeah, I'm still getting this presentation to be allowed
Okay.
to show the platform. So you carry on. You'll see it come through just now.
Okay. While Vincent fights with technology, the reason I shared the image was to just kind of ensure that we all are at the same departure point and kind of have a brief understanding of what we mean when we talk about gender identity, gender expression, biological sex and sexuality, because they're concepts that we're not all often engaged with or take for granted. And the reality is that we all believe to a certain extent that there's a direct line and a natural order of things. You're a male, you're masculine, you like boys' things, and you're attracted to women. But the reality is that this is a very simplistic, false narrative of the binaries. Things aren't black and white. They aren't just two colors. There's no real binary. And there's more continuum of all these things. And if Vincent helps us with the slides, I'll share with you a bit about how these things interact. You know, as much as there's a biological sex that relates to our hormones, we don't fit completely into those boxes. Some men are more hairy than others. Some men have higher testosterone than others. Some women have more estrogen and as a result look a particular way. And the same goes for gender expression, how we dress, how our posture is, what our roles in society aren't static. They change, and we often move through these depending on the types of situations we find ourselves in. And the reality is that sexual orientation is the same. We are sexually attracted to some people, we're romantically attracted to others. And as we move through the ages of our lives and ourselves kind of develop and are more exposed to different things, that shifts. Okay, it's fine, Vincent. You can just keep it on the second slide.
The second slide, okay. All right, there we go.
Yeah, you can just keep it there. So the reality is that it is kind of no, it's fine. It is like inclusive and amalgamation of many different things. And the reason I shared the riddle with you guys was not to emphasize what is like our sexist views, but the reality is that we don't see women in leadership positions. And people often ask the question around that video is that perhaps it's an issue of language as well. Had the person said, honey, I wish you all the best, would we have assumed that possibly it could be a woman and therefore the mother? But that also speaks to the language we expect of particular people based on how they express themselves and the gender they express in the world or their sex assigned at birth. And we live with these subconscious biases. And young people are less comfortable with these traditional gender norms and rigid sexuality and gender labels. And even ourselves as futuristic thinkers need to start asking ourselves what a world post-gender looks like. You know, if we step outside of these boundaries, what would the world look like? Because we're so used to creating these boxes so that we can simplify and live a particular way. But what if people were just humans and the rest didn't matter? You know, imagine raising a child in a world where everything we understand about sex and gender become obsolete and is completely irrelevant, where concepts like male and female, heterosexual and homosexual simply didn't exist. And we didn't ascribe certain characteristics based on them. Imagine people fell in love with people and we played sports because we were interested in them, or we chose careers because of our aptitude. And we were allowed to express certain emotions without socialized filters. because now we expect boys to play rugby. We expect male to fall in love with female. If men show emotion in public, it's something that's frowned upon. And again, this shifts, and it's based on various culture and religion. But ultimately, the broader society, these are things that exist. But if we moved away from this, if we imagined a world post-binary, what would this mean for industry? If your friends are pregnant now, the first question you ask is it a boy or a girl? And from there on, you choose pink clothes, blue clothes, you buy dolls or you buy cars. Currently, marketing that's done, in the fashion industry or for cosmetics has a lot of gendered stereotypes in them. And based on, if we reflect on the conversation that we had last week around artificial intelligence, automation, and robotics, if jobs that have traditionally been kind of for men because they are manual labor no longer exist and are being done through automation and robotics, what would genderless careers look like? And what are the challenges and opportunities that come with this? So we currently understand the world in a particular way. Religion ascribes the world in a particular way, so does culture. But there's so many opportunities that come from freeing away from these gender constructs and basically allowing us to experience the full spectrum of what it means to be human without having to filter and abide, without having to live within the expectations and the sexual norms. I would really like to spend more time having a bit of discourse and reflection around this from you guys as people in industry, and how you approach the world and how far you think we are from that reality. And if you even see it as possible, where we are just people, and we are people who recognize that there's a continuum and you can ebb and flow and shift across the spectrum, across a biological spectrum, based on where you are in your age, perhaps across the gender identity and how you express that depending on what you're feeling and where you are in your life. And even around sexual orientation, recognizing that how much more could be available to you as an individual to love if you let go of the notion of I'm sexually attracted to X or I am emotionally attracted to Y. So I'm gonna leave it there, Vince, and I'd like us to have more of a discussion and a reflection around that. And I am interested to know how many of you guessed in the brain teaser that the CEO was in fact the mother.
Right. Okay. Jeez. Right. So, any further contributions to Charlene before we get to questions? Where is MJ? Is MJ gone? Okay, that's fine. Right. So yeah. So any contributions? Any questions? I don't know where MJ went, but I know that I met MJ in 2015 at a friend's party. Oh, there we go. Oh, who's MJ? Oh, well, MJ, he was here. I don't know where he went off to. But the reason why I'm asking for him is because he can throw some further insight into the subject, because I am aware that he is a gender activist, if there's such a thing. And he also teaches non-profit organizations about issues concerning sexuality and gender. And he taught me a lot in 2015. Him as a homosexual male, he came across to me as very educational, not biased, telling the story as he sees it and as he's aware of it, and that helped me understand a whole lot better than having to understand the issue of homosexuality or bisexuality or asexuality as an abnormal thing. You put it into my vocab, you put it into my memory, and I've grown in the understanding of the subject since then. And that is why I would have preferred that he hones into the subject and carries on with it. But in any case, in the absence of MJ, is there anyone who's wanting to ask a question? Is there anyone who wants to further comment on the subject?
I have a question.
Oh,
You see, I think I'm going to go back to picking people. Anyway, yeah, shoot, Nadia.
I was just thinking if, like post-binary, if we think about not women and men, are there still women and men in this post-binary type of world? That was my question.
Okay. So for me, I think the point that I'm really trying to make is that, okay, I can hear myself, so I'm not sure if there's a lag, so I'm just going to keep talking, and
Yeah.
if it's messed up, it's messed up. I'm sorry.
And by the way, sorry, before you carry on talking,
So
MJ,
the reality, yeah?
sorry, MJ. Oh, we tested this thing of his. It was working like a Boeing not so long ago. Now it's working like a Tata.
Mm-hmm.
It could be because when everyone is on video, it compromises the network. So maybe since we've seen our faces, if we all go onto audio, it will improve the network.
It looks absolutely hideous on YouTube. Have you seen people that don't show their faces?
I forgot that this goes to YouTube.
Oh my gosh, it's all about YouTube, right? It's not about us, it's about YouTube. Sorry.
Anyway, so please do carry on, Charlene. I apologize.
So your question, Nadia, was, would there be males and females in a world post-binaries?
Yes.
Okay, was that the question? Okay.
That was my question.
And can I ask, when you say males and females, do you mean literally the sex of male and female?
Yeah. Well, biologic, I think the socially constructed males or females, but I don't know how they are attached to biological version of male and female.
Okay.
Only, delete our biological sex. Well, it can.
Okay, so maybe maybe let's go back to the gender-bred person, right? So we have a biological sex that we are born with, right? In our pants and in our hormones and in our bodies, biologically, we are male or female. And not many of us are 100% male or female, right? So some of us have XXY chromosomes, some of us have XYY chromosomes, and based on that different biological makeup, we sit somewhere in between, yeah? And then, so that's what we mean when we talk about sex, male or female, and people that are intersex who perhaps have an amalgamation, which often is referred to in society as a deformation, and we insist on having surgery to make people either male or female, and because we don't accept that reality, right? We see it as a mistake. So that's what we mean when we talk about biological sex. And then we grow up and we are in our heads a particular gender. And this is what we mean when we talk about your womanness or your manness, your femininity or your masculinity. And that also shifts. Some men, some biological men are more masculine. Some biological men are more feminine. They are by nature tender men. I mean, Vincent goes for petties and nannies all the time, and perhaps others
I'm not the only one.
Be bothered. and so the gender is expressed through our gender expressions of you are either a more masculine man that likes to wear rugby shorts and build, or you are a more feminine man that likes to be tended and have your head rubbed and watch movies at home. And my view is that more and more we're accepting the notion that we aren't cisgendered. What's in our pants and what's in our heads don't match. We're accepting the reality that we live on this continuum and on this spectrum, and move up and down it. And I hope that we'll get to a point where it actually doesn't matter where on the spectrum we are, where we can just be genderless and it's irrelevant, where a t-shirt is a t-shirt. It doesn't have to be a t-shirt in a woman's section, because what does it mean when someone says to you, this is a male clothes in the shop, but they're my clothes, I'm a woman. Who the hell decides that they're male clothes? And it's things like that I hope that we will start to unpack and move away from this notion of it is important to understand the world from a lens of sex and gender, because I really don't believe it is. I think we can be all things, and depending on where we are in life and what situations we're faced, you move up and down that spectrum and you choose to draw on different traits to meet that. But it is challenging. I mean, it's hell of a challenging because it turns everything we know upside down. It takes away all the expectations that help us simplify life so that those expectations exist so that we can simplify and we can basically live easier. But it would all be a surprise should we take it away. So it's not that they would not exist, but they wouldn't have meaning and they therefore wouldn't matter. Yeah. Okay.
Right. I've got a question, and anyone who has even something that remotely resembles an answer, it doesn't have to be correct. It could be anything, and I'm asking for me a fundamental question. The creation of words and defining them is only relevant for a particular era in the lifetime of human beings, right? In the particular lifetime of evolution, right? So we know that there are words today that exist that did not exist 10 years ago because there was no need for them to exist, or probably there wasn't an awareness that they should exist. Does anyone know when the word men and the word woman or the word boy or the word girl was created? And for what purpose was it created? Has it always been like that? Or is it something that somewhere along the line was conjured up? And again, we probably need to go back to saying, how long have human beings existed? And in the existence of human beings, at which point did it become necessary to categorize living beings as male and female? or boy or girl. Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah. Hi, how's it, guys?
Yes. Thanks for
Wow, nice one,
There's the Bible.
Where's my Bible? Where is it? I thought I'd put it out of view. Hi, guys. Thought I'd just chime in there on the evolution of language and words. Not that I'm a linguist myself, but working closely with dead languages. I mean, it's an interesting question that Vincent is asking, and I think it ties in quite nicely with what I think is the purpose of today's presentation, where we are trying to envision a world beyond binaries, because we've realized that in categorizing a world within a black and white, male, female, opposites, or is exclusionary in a way, and so once we attach certain attributes to certain identities, we then find ourselves on tricky ground, on tricky terrain, where we then exclude others on the basis of those attributes, which, by the way, are not, and let me say this, not scientific. Thanks, Charlene. It's a compliment for a pastor to be likened to Moses.
Oh,
All right.
by the way,
So
you look like Moses for the rest of everyone.
yeah. It's been my life's work to try and be like the great prophet Moses. And so, so these divisions that we have, and this is before, just, in 2 minutes to get into your question, Vince, and these divisions that we make, and these, assigning these different attributes, some of which we valorize as a society. For example, intelligence to white, with stupidity to black, or strength to male, weakness to female, are not even consistent throughout. And I don't want to use the word scientific, because that in itself is not an absolute term, because people usually use words like scientific and objective to sort of make their works unchallengeable, or their views above questioning. Right. And then back to your word. Words evolve with time. One of the, and so is our understanding of our world, and that's precisely why words evolve over time. One of my favorite words in the Greek text is charis, which evolved into char in the Latin, and then you had it transformed and transferred into the English as charity, right? And of course, now our understanding of charity is altruism, basically, showing acts of kindness, or acts of kindness. However, the original meaning of the word charis is actually, and the closest word to it is grace, which is undeserved or unmerited favor, which is what we have now. But over time, the use of the word changes until it means something completely different. And what brings about these changes is not people's understanding of the word, but people's understanding of their world. And so the need to adapt the words in their language in order to make sense and concretize the world that they live in. And so you'll find that in various eras of humankind, words like man, woman, male, female, boy, girl, mean completely different things as people try to concretize and try to understand and sort of interact with their world. So a man in South Africa means something totally different to a man in Scandinavia, in a Scandinavian country, like, for example, Denmark. And a boy in the Eastern Cape, even, of South Africa, means something totally different to what we'll call a boy in KZN, KwaZulu-Natal. And so this has to do with how we're trying to make sense of our world. And I think that's where Charlene's presentation becomes important, where we say, in our understanding of the world, let's move beyond just the black and white, boy, girl, male, female, sort of understandings of our world, because we've just seen that our world is much more complex than we'd like to simplify it, and we'd like to believe. And so in opening it up to moving beyond just binaries, it's not the eradication of what we've always thought was the norm, heteronormativity, what we thought was the norm, but it's actually opening up the space so that we could include even more identities that have been pushed to the peripheries and to the margins. Yeah.
Yeah. And so thanks for that too. So in short, what you are telling me is that it's insignificant when the words emerged, but the definition of men and women would have evolved over time for whatever the reason they've been, on the basis of how people view their world at that point in time. And I think I think then we in my, because I've got a very keen interest on the subject, because I grew up with my mom and my sister, and those were the only two people in the family which I recognized as human beings, right? My dad died when I was 5, really. My dad died when I was 5, so I actually don't have a figure in my mind of what a male looks like. The only thing which I had in my mind for the longest time is a female, right? And the recognition of what a human being was based on how I saw my mom and how I saw my sister. So growing up and then realizing, and by the way, my mom taught us everything. I mean, cooking, cleaning, washing, all the domestics. My sister and I interchangeably, we allotted various duties growing up. Which really didn't matter whether you're a boy or a girl. Some to clean the loo, you clean the loo. Some to rake the yard, you rake the yard. There were no differences. So it was very hard for me to resonate with the idea of what is a male in the context of how people generally view a male. And as I grew up and I broke into puberty and I started interacting with boys, in high school, that's where all these things happen. I then found myself to be quite an anomaly, right? I was called all sorts of things. To some degree, where I grew up, there are people who still today think, because they've never seen who I date, or they don't care to check who I date, who still believe today that I am a homosexual. Because in their minds, I never spend time with men, I never spend time socializing with people who are male, because I never understood whether there's a difference or not. I just get on with people because I get on with people. And it's irrelevant to me whether they've got a penis or a vagina. Now, coming back to the question of saying, at which point does a guy like me get to be completely liberated in society in having to associate with whoever they want to associate with, purely because they want to connect, not because they have a particular sexual organ, not because they speak with a broken voice or a tiny voice or whatever the case is. I mean, at which point are these things going to start becoming irrelevant in society? And are we at all close to that?
If I could come in there just to add on what Vincent was sharing, thank you for pouring your heart out and sharing on the depth of it. I think for me, studying on your question and to your point, it's understanding what is our basis of communication as human beings. What is common everywhere. You'll find body language is similar everywhere in the world. When I do this, everyone in the world would know what I mean. And I think language then comes to influence individual agenda, because then what I want to create and what outputs I desire, I put a word into it to create that output and put a label on it so that I can then say, this is how things should be. I think there are sentimental resonance when we see through different religions, which we find the same topic where they talk about creation and they talk about words. So I think as human beings, I don't know, I might be wrong. Our fundamental communication is telepathic, where we can able to communicate with each other by energies and how we interact with each other. So then I could say men are the dominant figures because I want to be dominant over a woman, and then create a God male figure and not create a God female figure because I want to push my ideology as a male. And then creates a society that views things on that angle and make male dominant and make things dominant that are regarding male. But then nature will tell you that, hey, women carry babies for 9 months in their tummy. So who's the creator? So if you're saying you are God as a male, and then you find this being who carries a baby inside their tummy for 9 months, and they come to be this amazing, beautiful baby that gets born. So it gives a question to then say, men are the dominant God figures, because that picture tells you that women are the one who are created. So you see, there's that conflict that you find in the world. So I think for me, what is important is to look at what nature is saying to us and what everything around us is saying to us, so that we can able to find a conclusive and a common answer to our questions, so that we can able to find a 360 circle that meets. So for me, I think that's what important, because even with words, it has nothing to do with languages. I think it's more of sounds. Because if I could ask everyone right now in this group, if you look at your name and look at your life throughout, like if you Google the meaning of your word and then look at your life, you'll see so much relativity in that. So which means probably nature was talking to your parents and they were looking for an actual sound of your name, not the actual name itself and the language of that name, but what the sound of nature is saying. So I think nature is continuously leading us and directing us in many other ways, because you will find from evolution, they would say life became from an atom, and then from the biblical understanding, they say it came from a man. So which means everything came from one, it became many. So then you cannot say, okay, there's always been man and female, because everything came from one. So which means we just continue seeking and finding new things. Because for me, for example, I always believed God was a male, but with further research and finding out and looking at things, I believe God is a woman. So I think for me, it's a matter of finding consistency with everything that is surrounding us.
Right. Okay. So Charlene is sick and tired of us discussing the status quo, and what she's asking is, if we can just imagine raising children in a future where everything we understand about sex and gender is obsolete and irrelevant. Do you want to lead us into that direction of thinking, Charlene?
You're mute, Charlene.
You're muted.
Sorry. Thank God for the video. You could see me like lip syncing there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So look, I don't want to lead us there, but I do wonder if we can just reflect within our own industries and the work that we do and the lives that we live, what that would look like, because I ebb and flow in this space all the time. There are days that I put on red lips and I rock heels because I need to be more feminine, because I want the room to perceive me in a particular way. And I know that those people will listen to a woman that looks a particular way. And because I need to be heard, I put myself in that space, right? And there are times when I couldn't give a fuck. And I'm like, this is who I am. And this is how I feel now. And that comes to you in a particular form. And those are times where I'm most comfortable. But that's not to say that those other aspects of me don't exist. And I really do wonder, and which is why I'm throwing it to you guys, is like, what would that world look like for people who do live slightly more heteronormative lives? You know, for you to reflect, and what would that look like to be in a genderless space, to just be a person before you're a woman, or before you're a man, or before you're masculine, or before you're feminine. You know, Vince, you were talking about growing up and how people in your space, you know, assume certain things about you currently based on how you grew up and the friends that you kept, etc. Is it even so far-fetched that we can't? Because we go around in circles with this, I think. You know, there are extremes where men were wearing bell-bottom pants not so long ago, and now they're wearing skinny jeans, and at some point they'll go back to baggy clothes. But what if all of that was just irrelevant? If clothes were just clothes, and you walked into a shop and you could buy whatever the hell you wanted, and we asked, oh, you're pregnant, is the child healthy, you know, as opposed to, is it a boy or a girl? So yeah, like, I'm interested to hear from you guys. Is there space for a genderless world? Can you even envision it? How far-fetched is it? Yeah.
I can answer that, but I don't want to talk now. MJ, do you want to say something?
Yes. I think I have something on my mind. It's very hard to imagine a future where there is no gender, because when you look at gender, it sort of gives power. It gives power to males. Let's say that we're shifting roles. We're looking at it at a feminist view where we say we're empowering women. Then when these women are empowered, what happens to the males? So it's always going to be a clash of the genders. But I think if we take it to saying that we're not looking at gender, it would be a very peaceful world. For example, since I'm a teacher, we've had cases where learners are being bullied, especially if they are male. They're being bullied for being soft targets, where you get them being bullied. And we have this particular learner who likes dressing up as a female. And when he's dressed up as a female, you could see the confidence and the free spirit that is in, as compared to when he's dressed as a male. I think that if we remove the gender titles and just focus to human beings as beings, would be in a very peaceful world and in a peaceful environment where you won't feel pressure of having someone who's a dominant and someone who's who has less power.
Sure. Yeah, and I think I can agree with you there, MJ, to say it's very hard to imagine a world post binary, because in South Africa, as much as same-sex marriage is legal, there are still people who just can't accept that reality, either in their social spaces or in the environment in which they operate. I mean, the more you go into Africa, the worse the subject becomes. There's even laws where homosexuals get jailed and so on and so forth. It's awful stuff. So it's very hard to imagine a world post-binary when there's still people that are stuck in that sort of thinking pattern. But I mean, I would like to throw a challenge to everyone and ask the question of saying, is the issue of gender or issue of sexuality a subject of interest to those that don't need to think about where their next meal is going to come from? Is it a question that sits in a particular hierarchy of needs, or is it a fundamental question physiological question where we actually say, if we can deal with this, then we can move on into imagining a world that does not have male or female.
Can I chip in?
I see Louis frowning there. I like that. I want you to say something. But anyway, go on, Wise.
I think in my perspective, when I analyze what we are discussing here, is that this is associated with freedom, where it can be a freedom of expression, freedom of being, whereby, you know, just like MJ has explained, you can be in a society dressed in a certain way that makes you feel in a particular way, whether it gives you confidence or whatever the reason may be. And in a sense whereby you are saying, can it be associated now with survival, be it getting opportunities or having finding yourself in certain spaces that actually enhances your growth, be whether financial or in whichever form. And those things enhance your freedom. And from what we've realized and what we've noticed, freedom is expensive, you know. Like it always comes at a price. And I think then the question then comes, how more freely are we becoming? Are we, you know, like from the chains, you know, how closer are we towards that space where we are really free to just be these natural human beings, as Charlene has explained, you know? So if my bigger part of Wise is on the feminine side, how free am I to just be that person in the society, you know? So I think, yeah, for me, I look at this as more about freedom more than anything else.
Yeah. Yes, dude.
Yeah, no, I think Wise has hit the nail on the head. Well, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, it's my truth from where I stand, and I completely agree with what he's saying. And I think what we need to normalize is what has been abnormalized, right? That's what, so that it needs to be normalized. And doing that is not speaking against anything that has been accepted as normal, you know, in any more. So, I mean, I like Wise's use and appropriation of the term freedom, where we say we're not just granting people who might be different from us the right to be, right? It shouldn't be granted to them. We should just abdicate that space, which is dehumanizing and marginalizing them, right? So as a man, I don't have a right to say I'm allowing females the freedom to be, you know, I mean, that on its own is problematic, because I will then also place myself in a position of having to supervise the freedom I've granted them, right? And I think that's where the problem is, because if once it's granted to them, then I must supervise it because I gave it to them. They might mess it up. So and females must never accept that. They must never accept a freedom that's been given to them, right? They must take it. They must fight for it. And so I'm very wary of a language that will speak of freedom in light of, and going back to MJ's comment, that will speak of this freedom having to be negotiated with the powers that be, which is heteronormativity. When now, you know, we need to coddle their anxieties of being obliterated by opening up the space to the possibility of existence of different sexualities and different genders. And precisely because if we plead, you know, for this, or if, you know, they plead for this from heterosexuals, then we'll always be there to supervise it. Okay, hey, you're now playing around with this freedom that we have granted you. We'll take it back. And so I think there needs to be a place for us where we get to a point where we say, you know, allowing others to be, allowing people to be, to the freedom, or the freedom to be And that's it, Nadia, right? I mean, you get it. It should never be supervised. That's why it should never be granted. It should never be given to anyone because it should never be granted. You know, so it should never be supervised. That's why it should never be granted. Yeah. So let's not get anxious when we say people must be allowed to be. It has nothing to do with the threat to our own existence. But people must be, because them not being allowed to be is a threat to their own existence. That's it.
Yeah. And I well, nobody's asked the question of answered, and I'm keen really, because I find it harder and harder to, and I always tell the story when I'm amongst friends, I find it harder and harder to discuss the issue of freedom, to discuss the issue of sexual orientation, freedom to be whoever you want to be. I find it harder and harder every time I travel into Africa. I mean, this is 2015, all right? I'm in Portembourg, which is a small town, say 80, 90 kilometers away from Luanda. And yeah, this is, I must be careful what I'm saying because we've got clients there. But anyway, so I go down to Luanda and I'm traveling with a group of men, right? But these men, right? Yeah, in my books, they need to go under the shower, right? That's my view. And we're in the same car and we're traveling home. And I happened to take out, I think it was a lipstick, a labella thing, something to put in my mouth. And as I apply it, this guy looks at me and says, "Hey, are you a boy or a girl?" I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Why are you doing what you're doing?" I said, "Because my lips are dry." I mean, he says, "No, we don't." And I look at his feet. His feet are as dry as a desert. And I understand why he would question me putting something on my lips, because his feet look like they're ready, you know, to cut across the Kalahari Desert. But the point I'm making is, in a country where there's abject poverty, the issue of gender and sexuality is so strong that you can't even begin. I mean, and I say that the abject poverty is to a point where in a country where HIV and AIDS is prevalent, you still have to buy condoms. I don't know if it's still the case in 2020, but the government does not give you condoms. That's how poverty-stricken the country is. They are not willing to start talking about whether I'm a male or a female, or whether I'm a homosexual or I'm not. They're not ready to that. So it is a question of futuristically imagining a world where there's non-binary set aside really for economies that are far more advanced than the others, or are we just dreaming?
Can I chip in, Vincent? I think I'll make it. I hope my example will be practical enough, given the conditions that we find ourselves in, you know, currently. Some of these things, yes, may actually take a lifetime. But I've always said that if there's things that I want to actually influence in the society, probably I'll start by influencing Vincent, who's closer to me, with the hope that he'll influence Charlene. And right now we've got a conversation with 12 people. There's a whole lot of things that I'm learning, and I believe for a lot of us as well. And we may not know how long it will take for the word to get out there to many others, including those countries where this is not the subject of discussion. But the good thing is that people travel, we migrate and all of those things. You get to another country, you get influenced about certain cultures, you take what you feel resonates with you. And it's a matter of hope that one day this will spread like Corona and people will accept it.
Yeah.
That's just it's hope.
Yeah, right. That's and Charlene has just alerted us of the time, and it's unfortunate, really, that we have to do that. Monitor.
Sorry,
But you
I'm gonna
have
be very brief. I'm gonna be very,
otherwise I'm going to hurt you. Like, that's it.
I'm gonna be very, very brief.
Right.
I think for me, just to go back on Charlene's question in terms of how do we see this in society, in our everyday life, and in our prospective careers. So I think for me, it depends on where you're asking the question from. You can ask the question from the experience, or you can ask the question from a person who's standing as a bystander. But I think for me, what is important is finding out in terms of what is the projection and what is the actual desire. Because we can have a female desire as a male inside. You can have a much more dominant female spirit, but the output could be male. So those are the things you need to connect with as individuals. And what does that mean for you? What does that interpret for you? Because those are two reality truths. They are both true, that I'm dominantly female in my spirit, but my biological expression is female. It's male. So no other person can prescribe that for you and say, this is the best expression that you can experience. So I think for me, when individuals can do a thorough introspection of those two realities, and the conclusion will be their freedom, regardless of what other people say. When you are able to then have a satisfying answer for yourself in those two conflicting desires that are there within you as a person, because you have biological hormonal desires, you have spirit, you could say non-physical desires that are there. So it is for you to interrogate it, and once you find a conclusion and be satisfied with that, regardless of other people.
Yeah. Right. So we're going to. Oh no.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, because you're getting feedback there. So yeah, the Nadia, I have to leave now. Thank you so much, Charlene, for bringing up the topic. Very much needed. And thanks, Vincent, for hosting. Just thought of something. This whole subject also touches equality to be different in the broadest sense. Intersectionality. I didn't even know there was a word like that existed. Anyway, so we need to move forward towards equality in a society, sexually, racially, and everything. Just thoughts. Thanks. And stay safe, everyone. Yeah, we are staying safe with the help of the SUNDEF. We've got armies making sure we are safe. Stu said, because the question which I asked earlier on, Stu answered it on text, and he says, research shows that actually scarcity of resources usually coincides with the high level of intolerance, especially amongst the oppressed and or disenfranchised. Did I say that right? I don't know. But anyway, the struggle for resources breeds high levels of intolerance, and I completely do agree with that. And then there's another issue which I don't think we'll have time to really cover it today, but this issue of patriarchy. I mean, goodness sake, I hate it personally, and it is a very pertinent issue when we yeah, Charlie. It's a very pertinent issue. It's very dark. It's very pertinent when we discuss issues of sex and gender. But just to close off. So this is my dream of the future. It's something that I always have in my mind. In any case, so I'm not thinking it up today because of the relevance of the question. Again, as I said, that my upbringing has always been females. And I will say this, as a man, I am willing to abdicate my inherent power of being a male in any situation at any time. I am willing to do that to an extent where even today I'm struggling with female counterparts as a person who's attracted to males. I don't know if that is something that is encoded or if I really am attracted to females, but it's something else. But I am I am struggling to maintain relationships because I know I'm not Superman. I know I'm not Batman. I know I'm not those heroes that get exemplified on TVs to encode people to understand the fact that only males can save the world. I understand that I'm fallible. I understand I've got imperfections. And I'm willing at any one time to forget that I'm male, to allow for the advancement of interpersonal lives and domestic life and the life of society in general. And that is the world which I imagine, where none of these things matter, whether you're male or female. And I want to say, I've never said this to you, MJ, that thank you very much for familiarizing me with the idea of homosexuality to a point where I've actually normalized it. I always say, we went up to a trip to Lesotho. MJ, can I talk about this?
Yeah,
sure. So we went up to a trip to Lesotho, and MJ brought his boyfriend along, and we were heterosexual couples sharing a house just under the mountains of Lesotho, Mokotlong. Okay, I always say it wrong. The Sotho people will chastise me, but anyway, it's Mokotlong, right? In my world, we were in I think it's Underberg or something like that, and MJ brought his boyfriend along. As we were going into bedrooms, MJ went into his room with his boyfriend, and it was normal. And today, still, I do not frown upon same-sex relationships simply because I have learned that from you, and the grasping of the ideas and the science of it has all been through your subliminal messaging as friends, MJ. So thank you very much for that, and that's my piece for tonight. Anyway, say your goodbyes, everyone.
Thanks, Vince. Thanks, everyone. I've learned a lot, actually.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Charlene.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.